Awesome. All right, we'll get started. This should be a pretty quick presentation, by the way. This is kind of, hopefully it's not going to be too much. Feel free to interrupt me as we go. The topic today is going to be, all right, everything's sharing, sweet. Uh, Congregate and our APIs and the intersection between them. So we've noticed over the past several months a growing confusion between what Congregate does and what our various importers available directly in GitLab do. This specifically come up with direct transfer becoming more easily available and more widely used. So this presentation is going to cover a quick rundown of how we can migrate different organizations to GitLab, what existing importers exist in the product today, and why we use Congregate to interact with our different importers and ensure a faster time to value for our customers. So, how do we migrate to GitLab? The current available options we have would be utilizing existing APIs, which is what we're going to focus on in this presentation. And then the other two options we have, just as a quick review, we have geo-replication, which is originally used for things like disaster recovery or improving latency across geographical regions. We can also use geo-replications to do an entire system migration behind the scenes of users, and we ideally use this for migrating large-scale GitLab instances. This is only available for GitLab to GitLab migrations, but this is it's a pretty robust solution if all the stars align to make a geo-replication viable. And then the other option is backup restore. This is the simplest form of migrating between GitLab instances. Effectively, if we're backing it up in one location or restoring up to another, this is ideal for moving single smaller GitLab instances. And again, it's only available for GitLab to GitLab migrations. Where utilizing existing APIs comes in handy is it gives us more flexibility in terms of source types that we can migrate from, as well as like how we can script out certain different pieces and how we'd migrate different components and all that into a GitLab instance. So what importers currently exist in GitLab? There's a little bit of a separation between the UI and the API. On the UI side, we support GitLab both through file-based export import or direct transfer, Bitbucket Server, Bitbucket Cloud, GitHub, both importing from github.com and GitHub Enterprise, Git Fogbugs, a manifest file, or just a standard Git repository clone URL. On the API side, we support GitLab again through file-based export import or direct transfer, Bitbucket Server, Bitbucket Cloud, GitHub, github.com, and GitHub Enterprise, and then Git. So how does professional services perform API-based migrations? We use a tool called Congregate. It's a tool that we maintain on the PS team, and it orchestrates the end-to-end process of migrating an organization to GitLab from various types of sources. It relies on the existing importers we have available in GitLab that can be used through the GitLab REST API. We also include additional third-party REST and GraphQL APIs, along with other API libraries bundled into Congregate to support migrating from multiple different source types. Another added benefit of Congregate is that it also helps us to support other source types that do not currently exist as built-in importers. So for example, we've been developing an Azure DevOps importer directly in Congregate for the last few months. So I've heard I can use direct transfer or Congregate. So which one do I pick? The good news is you can use them together. Congregate can orchestrate GitLab imports by utilizing the direct transfer method. You could also use direct transfer without Congregate directly in GitLab, either through the UI or through your own API scripts. But the benefit of using them together is you get the performance of direct transfer with the added benefit of all the additional data that Congregate brings over, things like CI/CD variables, packages, containers, etc. And where does Congregate fit into this process? It is, to look at the diagram on the right, it's, basically it's a overarching wrapper over different components that will build out pretty much a migration tool suite to make sure we can get customers over to GitLab. We also use Congregate to kind of fill in some gaps. So one piece would be our importers do not currently cover pieces that would involve space constraints. So that would be things like packages and containers. Security concerns, none of our importers cover variables, keys, or environments. There's also feature gaps in our importers. Usually that is, we may have something we're going to implement in the future on the roadmap, but right now a customer needs it available today. So if we can, we'll build a stopgap in Congregate, and then as the importers get more mature, we pull that code out of Congregate and just rely directly on our importers. And all this is what we refer to as post-migration steps or features. So again, looking at the diagram, we can see Congregate kind of wraps around all these different things. We utilize our built-in importers. We utilize different third-party REST and GraphQL APIs, and we utilize some additional Python libraries to interact with things like Docker and Jenkins. Quick recap of how Congregate works. There are 4 major stages with using Congregate. I'm realizing the current audience on the call, this is probably a big review for you all, but you've seen this probably a million times. First step would be listing, where we pull down a snapshot of metadata from the source instance and we put them into 3 main types of assets. So we pull down the data to create users, groups, and projects, and this utilizes the source system's REST and or GraphQL APIs. Once we have a snapshot, we can select different users, groups, and projects to stage for migration. And once we have all that, we can kick off the migrate command. And to skip to the next slide, which is just another highlight. Once the migrate command is done, we run post-migration tasks, which is where we bring in the additional data that our importers don't include. So to highlight kind of 3 of the 4 steps, listing and post-migration leverage GitLab's REST and GraphQL APIs, along with other third-party APIs here. And migrate is the specific stage where we are intersecting with our importers and using them to handle the process of exporting and importing the data from the source instance, if the importer is available. To dig into the ADO example, for example, we're doing all of that in Congregate, but we're still leveraging a little bit of our importers kind of in a more creative way to pull the data over. So, told you guys it was going to be pretty short. Quick recap of it. We look back at the diagram from a few slides prior. There it is. Congregate is the overarching wrapper. It's the orchestrator for a bunch of different APIs and functionality across GitLab and other source types. Wraps it all, orchestrates it to make it a more seamless process. We can use direct transfer and Congregate together. They're not mutually exclusive. And ideally, it's just there to make it easier for us to move customers to GitLab. And that's it. Did it under 10 minutes.
Is there a specific one we want partners to be using, or is it just anything with Congregate for migrations, Michael?
What do you mean? Can you explain more of what you want?
So
We
I know I get a lot of questions from Kelly all the time about like which migrations we can outsource to partners, staff with partners, I shouldn't say outsource. Um, does it have to do with the method, like direct transfer or Congregate only without direct transfer, or does it have to deal more with like the source and destination, or is it both?
It's a little bit of both. That's a good question. So depending on where they're migrating from and where they're migrating to can influence where a partner can be staffed to handle the migration. So this would have been a good slide to have in hindsight. If we're migrating to a self-managed instance where the PSE doing the delivery has access to an admin token, then we can set up a partner on any source type. If there is an admin token limitation, for example, we do not provide admin tokens to partners for GitLab.com, they're limited to using direct transfer to do a GitLab to GitLab migration. And that's kind of some of the different nuances there. And there's, depending on the source type you use, it's a little bit better now, I think, with the user mapping. And Glenn can correct me if I'm wrong on this. With the recent user mapping changes, we've actually kind of opened up the flexibility for partners to do migrations with the um, added steps of building out a better user mapping CSV to ensure all the user attributions come over. The one thing partners still cannot easily do due to user attribution limitations is migrating a customer from a GitLab instance to GitLab.com through file-based export import, just because that's a deprecated method. Um, but it's getting better as time goes on. The import team has been building out more um, better support for user attributions without the need for an admin token.
Gotcha. I want to take what you built in these slides and maybe add it to our migration methodology in our DK and create an MR, and work on you with that because this should just live within our
Mhm.
DK so anyone can pick it up and understand.
Yeah, totally. There's a link in the slide deck as well that covers. I think it was you and Glenn had built out the migration methods file in the
Yeah,
Congregate project.
it was Glenn. I just made it look a little nicer.
Okay, so yeah, we can move that into the DK and cover some more details based on what we've talked about here.
Cool.
Hey, I have a quick question, so I'm kind of curious. So I know since we talked about geo as potential method for one of the methods for migration, is our questions related to that off limits for this session, or can I ask?
We do
Just
have the full
as
hour, so if you
ah,
want,
okay.
we can talk about it. Yeah.
So, I'm kind of curious, how was that anyone has ever done that before? Because now I have a customer, so just I'll give you an example of a customer who's actually currently on an on-prem self-managed. They want to go to AWS self-managed. All there's like they are an all-in-one infrastructure right now. So terrible performance and whatnot. So we're just trying to get them to like a 3K architecture and split. But they also wanted to build Geo on top of this. So it's like a more subdued version of the Geo. So we'll have a 3K architecture for their primary site and then 1K kind of like ish architecture for their secondary site. So if I were to, and then for some technical constraints and network bandwidth constraints, at least currently what we're experiencing with them is a lot of the backup restore process from their existing environment to the new one is kind of like taking forever. They have a 48-hour limit for cutovers if they need to use the new environment for like a new production instance. So we're kind of concerned about the timeline and how to speed up some of these things. So we've split some of the backup restore to like S3 buckets and attaching NFS volumes and stuff like that. So I'm kind of curious, like what could we have done differently if we were to kind of like, let's say, pick Geo to be a like a migration technique.
I can kind of speak to this. I'm doing this with a customer ongoing because they have a lot of data, but they're moving from single omnibus bare metal to AWS 10K cloud native hybrid. That just means that they're using EKS Kubernetes. And it's been quite troublesome. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Glenn. But yeah, so they're on the verge of wrapping up like a couple of little things with regard to registry and getting the replication over to the new environment. And again, they have a large data set, so I'm assuming that that's, a big portion of the problem. So once they get this, couple of little things figured out and set up, they'll be failing over to that. And they're doing multiple geosecondaries on top of that. So it is doable. There is, some things to look out for. Part of it has to do with, the database and getting it over to RDS. There's a couple of different methodologies to get that over, but, it would just be how much data are they trying to replicate and, you know, the origin and the destination for like objects, etc. So, but it is doable.
Awesome. Mind if I hit you up offline at some point? I know I probably just like to pick your brain a little bit more on this.
Certainly.
Thank you.
We also have additional delivery kits around some of these different styles. So, like Aaron's built out a few on the backup restore piece. I forget who's built out the Geo one if we have that. But so there's definitely different points of where the different migration styles work better. Backup restore is great for like smaller scale instances, and it kind of does hit a point of where it's no longer feasible just due to like time constraints, and that's where Geo definitely steps in and is more useful in that case. Another benefit on the API side is so SUD in the event of if this customer, let's say, had like two GitLab instances, you can kind of do a combination of different styles. So you'd migrate the largest instance through either backup restore or geo just to get a good baseline, and then any like supplementary smaller instances you'd use like the APIs to combine
Gotcha.
together. So there's no like single solution depending on, it's all dependent on the customer situation.
Yep. Understood. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have a question related to Bitbucket Cloud support. So I think, yeah, GitLab, I mean, we have now in the API, in GitLab frontend, the option to import from Bitbucket Cloud, etc. I remember an MR, I think from Jordan, for supporting Congregate. So is that already in place also in Congregate?
It's not the moment. We ran into a couple of issues getting it implemented. So we do have an extra kind of standalone script to handle automating Bitbucket cloud migrations. It's on the roadmap for Congregate 8, which is going to be the next major release. We're looking probably, early in the next year, going to be a much larger set of features implemented when we hit Congregate. We're going to basically stay on 7 and minor versions of 7 until we're at a comfortable spot of 7 being stable, and then we'll shift over to start building out 8. So Bitbucket Cloud is slated for early Congregate 8. We had, I think it was issues around getting user data over was the challenge. So because we went through it kind of linearly, we had to kind of, Jordan had to pivot to just get it working for the customer he was helping them migrate off of. So that is on the roadmap. It's just farther down at the moment. But ideally, we'll have Bitbucket Cloud and ADO fully supported. This is recorded, so hopefully I don't eat my words. But both of them fully supported, early next year.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Michael. The script you mentioned, like just for the testing purpose, is this available somewhere? Because I have there's a partner delivery in place, and like partner engineer was also asking something in that direction to me. So like if that script is available somewhere, I'll
Yep.
just share it with them.
Yep, I just sent it over to you. It isn't a private project, but I don't think there's any issues with sharing it with a partner, right, Glenn? Any concerns on that?
Which project would that be? The
Script Playground, I think.
um,
Just the file that Jordan had. It's a single file, so I don't
yeah, I
think
think that
sharing
should
that
be fine.
one's.
Even if we just copy paste it to someplace or
Yeah.
fine.
Okay. Cool.
I haven't audited the script playground, so I don't know for sure what else is in there.
Yeah, when I was looking at Jordan's script, it looks like it's pretty. I mean, he built out a full like CLI for it, so there's no hard coded tokens or anything. So looks pretty good to share.
Cool, thank you. I mean, I can copy paste this somewhere that the partner can access.
Along the lines of like best practices for migration, so one of the things that I recently encountered was for another customer, Richard and I are working together for the VM that we created for migration. needed to have like a global protect like VPN installed and then configured, and it has given some really tough experience, so to speak, for us to be able to actually install and configure global protect in a Linux box. So I'm kind of curious if we were to, and then we eventually figured it out. But I kind of have everything fresh in my mind on how I set it up and all that stuff. So I just would like to document it somewhere. Where do you think it ideally goes? I know some customers require us to do some other instance of any kind, like for example, Cisco VPN or something like that. I know I don't have a general VPN connectivity document, but very specific to global protect, which seems like a pain in the rear end to kind of set it up anyway. So maybe there's an opportunity for us to kind of get some knowledge on this. So okay, I see what you pasted. Okay.
Yeah, there's Glenn put together some docs on the VMs, and there's a section on VPNs and all that.
Oh
What's
yeah.
likely going to happen in the coming, quarter or so is a lot of the markdown files we have in the Congregate customer folder are probably going to move into the overall general migration delivery kit. But if you have some information you want to put in now, feel free to make an MR for that markdown file, and then as we move files around, we'll just get into the new location. So
There's
Awesome.
also a generic one I just linked in the chat that's been around for a while, specific to a couple different VPN providers. We could consolidate those because one's talking more about how the networking looks and the what and why and how we protect, and the other one's really more specific about setting it up. It might be better in that one, and to be honest, moving all of those into the VM project might be the best bet too.
Awesome.
Or at least those last two, the actual settings specific ones. So let's
Yep.
talk about that, Son.
Yep. Appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
anything else? Cool. I think we're good for this one. Thanks for the additional questions, folks. Slide deck is linked in the doc. The recording should be up. I assume probably. I don't think it'll be up today, but probably beginning of the new year. But thanks everyone for joining, especially on the last day for a lot of us before the holidays. Yeah.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Michael.
Merry
Yep.
Christmas. Happy holidays, everyone.
Great job, Michael. Thank you.
See y'all.
Happy holidays. Thanks, Michael.